is a truly inspirational guest. Sorry, let me just quickly, you want to see what's going on here? See what I look like? There I am. Okay. Let me carry on. Ms. Raseroka's professional and academic journey spans over 5 decades of active participation in library and information services across Africa and internationally. She has been integral in shaping the LIS profession throughout Africa and in influencing the global perception and understanding of indigenous knowledge systems and their value in literacy and freedom to access to information. Beginning her journey in 1969 as a library assistant, Ms. Raseroka rose to the position.
Ingrid, are you on?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello. Beginning her journey in 1969 as a library assistant, Ms. Raseroka rose to the position of Director of Library and Information Services at the University of Botswana, a post she has held from 1981 to 2010. In 1978, Ms. Raseroka was awarded a Master of Arts from University College London. As a consultant and advocate, Ms. Raseroka was involved in the founding of the Botswana Library Foundation in 1978 and the Standing Conference of African National University Librarians for Eastern, Central, and Southern Africa from 1992 to 1996. From 1995 to 1997, she was facilitator in the unification of South Africa's racially segregated library associations into what we know today as the Library and Information Association of South Africa.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
I thought I'd mute. Unmute?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Now I can hear you, yes.
Okay.
Good morning.
Wonderful.
Good day. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm just finishing my introduction and then I'll hand over to you. Is that all right?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I guess that is it. Yes. You are okay. Had you already started the introduction?
Yes, I started the introduction.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I shall catch up.
It's all about you, so there's nothing to catch up.
Oh, okay.
We just want to say that you're an exemplary mentor, advocate, and leader, and your influence is felt globally. Ms. Raseroka's articles and papers have been published widely, and she has presented at numerous international conferences and seminars. During this webinar, we hope to learn from Ms. Raseroka directly as she shares her leadership journey and insights. So, Ms. Raseroka, would you like to start? Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I will start. But what do you do with the slide? Okay. Good afternoon, friends and colleagues. Thank you so much for the honor and privilege to celebrate with you 25 years of LIASA through this conversation. I was asked to share my career progression and key aha moments and insights that have led me to, that have motivated me and inspired me to come to reach this leadership position. That's it. Excuse me, let me just, I'm trying to put on my slides as well. Yeah. Oh dear. Okay. So I thought that it is important that I share with you the context of my professional activities because of the difference between the difference from what my colleagues in South Africa, in particular at Liasa, would have had. So, just a personal introduction, as you have heard of the academic one, but let me do the personal one. I am K. Raseroka. I am Matlaba. That is my maiden surname. And I'm a Botswana citizen, but Zulu by birth. I'm married with 3 adult offsprings and 5 grand adults. I'm a retired academic librarian and have served for over 40 years in that position, but specifically in one university, University of Botswana, Lesotho, University of Botswana. I am enjoying the new challenges and excited by opportunities to learn. The overview of my presentation will cover my professional development through service rendered at the University of Botswana, the lessons learned, and then share my journey into international librarianship, focus on the background and process of election as IFLA president, and share aspects of leadership and strategy as I continue. And then I'll reach the conclusion.
I'm sorry, Ms. Raseroka, were you going to share slides with us or?
Yes, I'm trying to. Just hold on a minute.
Okay, perfect. No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Shall I continue or shall we wait?
No, please do continue. I'm sorry for the interruption.
No, that's all right. They will come on soon. I was educated in South Africa up to my BSc and diploma in library and information science at the University of the University of South Africa. Thanks to my parents' conviction, I treasure education as a lifelong empowerment. My work life commenced when I was appointed a junior library assistant at the University of Library in the University of Botswana, Lesotho, and Swaziland, which was located in Roma, Lesotho, in Maseru, where my husband was a junior lecturer in zoology and where we brought up our 2 children. The University of Botswana, Lesotho, and Swaziland, which I'll refer to as UBLS from now on, was as established to counteract the separatist educational philosophy of the neighboring apartheid states. It attracted, therefore, students from the region, Malawi, Rhodesia's, Botswana, Lesotho, and Swaziland, as well as South Africa. And it had international academic staff. From 1966 to 1975, it was a trinational university called University of Botswana, Lesotho, and Swaziland. In 1975, it separated. There was a separation when Botswana and Swaziland became University of Botswana in Swaziland, which lasted until 1982. And then in 1982, the University of Botswana was established. In 1970, the University of Botswana, Lesotho, and Swaziland Council decided that it would devolve all facilities to support part 1, the first 2 years of a 4-year degree. And it would be taught in Botswana campuses and Swaziland, offering humanities, science, and social sciences and education. This process of devolution resulted in the transfer of a starter collection of 1,100 titles to the Botswana campus library, which was located in a vacant church building. So we're starting small, starting rough, but we were committed to a development of higher education in Botswana. I was appointed library assistant in 1971 to join the then deputy librarian in establishing the library in support of learning, teaching of new university students, the majority of whom were from Botswana. The greatest challenge facing this nascent academic library was provision of adequate, relevant library resources to support each of the subject fields offered, which were humanities, sciences, social sciences, and education. There was no infrastructure for book purchases except through South Africa, where the banning of books on Africa or those judged to be unsuitable content by the government in power then could not be purchased for Botswana, though it was an independent state. The banning would take effect regardless of where the books were going. The systems for purchase of library books abroad from Blackwell's Oxford were developed. Processes to negotiate and justify unexpected financing challenges, customs clearance procedures for books, and avoidance of South African censorship laws to assure library materials required for development of independence in an African university became the major challenges, and we became adept at management of all the challenges that were experienced by academic staff who wanted the best possible resources and students who wanted to be helped to navigate the approach to learning, which depended on availability of lots of different titles rather than textbooks. Life was exhilarating, and communication skills with both students and staff was essential for effective library services. In 1975, when the dissolution of UPLS occurred, we then had to develop our own rapid collections because suddenly we had to provide for a four-year degrees. And as a result, we used the experience that we had gained and in managing to start from scratch a university collection, and we coped. We built on library systems that we had established, and we developed we specially designed two library buildings which were completed and we moved into the first of these in 1981. At that time, I was appointed university librarian. That is after 10 years of serving the University of Botswana, Botswana and Swaziland, because the university became University of Botswana in 1982. The lessons learned at this time, I want the screen to be on the other side. The lessons learned at the time were the development of a supportive, give and take relationship building skills and attitudes, an attitude based on understanding that no man is an island. With academic teaching staff, through appreciation of curriculum and related teaching needs, I developed and my team developed close working relationships based on subject librarianship, And we also learned how to negotiate with students in their search for and sharing of scarce and inadequate learning materials to support their learning needs, given the paucity of library use skills in the absence of a history of school libraries in the country. Team building across the library, as well as administrative staff who were giving us support services of maintenance and customs clearance, effective invoices, as well as prompt maintenance services were just absolutely essential for us. And as a result, we were able to see the university as part of the community rather than remain as an ivory tower. When UBLS, when the University of Botswana was established, the major aim was to expose the children of Botswana or youth of Botswana to the fact that there is more to development than ending at O levels. They needed to have access to higher education and appreciate the meaning of learning at that level. And on top of that, we needed, of course, to develop rapid development of local human resources since we had become independent in 1966. So the opportunities then, the challenges that were facing me in particular at the time when I became university librarian were intersectionality of gender issues with all the other challenges of making the university library relevant. I was the only female university officer out of the 5. And of course, at Senate, it was exactly the same thing. I was the only female. And when I became a member of council, I still was the only female. So I learned very quickly to do my research, to do my presentations and prepare thoroughly for any meeting I was going to go to in order to be able to justify why the library is doing what it does. Also, at that time, nowadays I don't think it's that youthfulness, but at the time I was 36 years old when I was appointed university librarian. And some of my colleagues, the male colleagues, were much older than me, and the issues of always putting down my looks rather than my efficiency were the things that worried me a lot. But I chose to master the way I worked. It's not coming through. Shall I continue? Yeah, okay. Apologies, we are having technical challenges with our slides, but Can you see the title slide? Hello? My goodness. Hello?
No, we can't see your slides.
Okay. Well, I'm still having my technical assistance going, but you can hear me though.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
All right, thank you. So, over and above that, being of South African descent, I had nationality issues where my fellow workers considered me a usurper of their rights. However, in time, I convinced them that we could work together and ensure that we develop as a nation before I became naturalized. The wide span of control provided a steep learning curve for me, but again, with the assistance of reading in journals and interactions with the university administration on a level playing field once they recognized that I intended to put my own stamp on the assignment that they'd given me, and particularly because I reported directly to the Vice Chancellor, who was accountable to Council. And if something went wrong, I had to stand for fiduciary responsibility. Opportunities that I had then were that I interacted closely with members of council, academic staff, and ex officio membership of committees, which lent me the opportunities to appreciate policy, regulatory systems, and corporate governance. So I mastered these paths very early in my career. The engagements in these areas laid a foundation for curiosity, self-confidence, and seeking for solutions through networking, advocacy, and negotiation skills, which proved useful in the regional and international professional leadership area of operation. So the journey then into international librarianship. I started that journey through the Standing Conference of East, Central, and Southern African Librarians in 1980 at an attendance, my first attendance of that in Lesotho, where the experience opened vistas of learning, networking, and sharing knowledge through presentation of papers and reflection on one's work context through an analysis and comparison with other colleagues' experiences and exploration of solutions together with teamwork. Importantly, this gave me the opportunity and inspiration to bid for the 7th Standing Conference of Eastern, Central, and Southern African Library Associations and Libraries in 1986 as the chairperson of the Botswana Library Association, which was founded in 1978. We had a membership of about 50, and that meant all hands on deck. The goal was to expose ourselves as Botswana Library Association members to the vistas that I had experienced in Lesotho, provide opportunities for all of us to learn new skills in proposal development for the bid, because we had to bid and show that we could actually host the region's librarians, and then begin to understand advocacy and political engagement with our parent ministries and institutions, negotiate for moral and financial support, since really as a developing country, all the money, all the funding came directly from subventions from the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Culture, under which the public library felt. And as well as get to know donors in the country right up to UNESCO. This was an invaluable period for learning very fast how to engage and interact. When we were, the conference was a success. We had pre-conferences and post-conferences, and the paper presentations were wonderful. The proceedings stand as a reflection of just how well that small group of volunteers, members of the Botswana Library Association, worked together to receive and welcome all the participants from the independent countries at the time. the African independent countries. It was a stepping stone into the global library leadership. And at the Lesotho conference, I was introduced for the first time to IFLA by the presentation from the Africa section secretary general, who showed us though it is costly, it was worth it, particularly for single universities, single libraries, services, and in small states like ours. Remember, Botswana is just at the time we were less than 2 million. Right now we are 2.5 million. And everything is very much in a developmental state. We are developing fast, but at the time in the 1980s, we're very much at a early nation state of development. So I signed up to participate and engage with colleagues in the global librarianship platform. I was fortunate to be selected to participate in 1983 in the Academic Libraries Pre-Conference Workshop, which was hosted by IFLA in Munich, and therefore was able to attend my first IFLA General Conference. I joined immediately, felt affinity to being a member of various sections. The Africa section was compulsory. Academic and research libraries were to support my development and understanding of the challenges of what other people were facing globally in supporting academic and research services, managed and then joined up also in the management of library associations, again, in order to bring back the experiences that I found there, or even run workshops for my own, at my own home base in the Botswana Library Association. And then the last but very important section was that of women and gender at IFLA. Again, because of the fact that at the time, there were very few women leaders in librarianship in Africa. So we interacted very much with our male colleagues who, looking back, did not consider gender as an issue, but they considered that you had to give of your best arguments and debates, and they were very ready to listen. As a result of constantly having to stand firm when I'm supporting my point and different points of view, I I was nicknamed Madam Thatcher. I didn't care. If the point was to be made, I felt that I should make it systematically and very clearly. That enabled me then to become a member of this Africa Section Committee, because I brought in the minority view in some cases, and small state libraries and issues that were affecting developing countries. The journey in these committees was from 1987 right up to the time when I became president-elect in 2001. I appreciated corporate governance for the section and aligned it to the IFLA overall governance. That was an investment of 16 years of personal development through volunteerism. I would like to summarize here to say membership of library association is a volunteer activity that you sacrifice and put in your time, but I didn't recognize it as sacrifice. I recognized it as part of my continuing professional development. And I would encourage any librarian who wants to develop beyond the theoretical learnings that we get in class as we train to be professional librarians, that volunteering in a library association is the best way forward in terms of learning from other people, educating oneself through literature, journal articles, and learning from others when they publish, and you listen and you say, what is the case in my situation? How can I improve my work experience? How can I learn beyond the operations, daily operations of my work, and use and understand the context in which I work? I think frequently as professionals, we focus a lot on the day-to-day work without contextualizing how our institution, our library as an institution, as part of a collective of sections within the environment we work in, how it interacts, aligns, and responds to the political and administrative and corporate governance of the institution. So, as an IFLA member, each and every one of us, regardless of where you come from, have equal rights, obligations, and are expected to interact, engage in all discussions that come to one section, since the decisions, the governing board decisions, come down for implementation at sections in accordance with how you as members of the section see its relevance or disagree with the approaches. That engagement enables one to navigate the politics of the global organization, understand the Eurocentric views and how they may not affect, they are not relevant to one's own operations. And in the process, I learned to look critically at what was relevant. At that time, in mid 1980s and 90s, IFLA was very Eurocentric. Even its governance was made up of more of collegial interactions amongst gentlemen who knew each other. Of course, there was an exception that we had one president who was a woman from the Scandinavian countries who had been appointed as IFLA president, but otherwise it were Eurocentric, and until when Robert Westworth, who was an American, Black American, became president. It was at this time that we all observed that it was possible to break the Eurocentrism and the barrier of convincing other people that you have something to say. With Robert Wedgworth's participation, we at Africa Section began to organize very strongly against the apartheid and absence of our colleagues, professional colleagues of color at IFLA. They could not attend because either they had no funding or because of simply the divisions within the country. And we felt strongly that they needed to be there. And as born South African, understanding the system, I was very vocal and worked with my colleagues at the Standing Committee, African Standing Committee, together with the management of Library Association, to such an extent that the president, Robert Wedgworth, appointed us a committee in 1993 to be the IFLA mission to South Africa. Suffice to say that that was a breakthrough for IFLA to really become a global association that has got values that say we are all equal regardless of color, regardless of the service that we give in our remote countries. And as such, that began my engagement with the negotiations with the library association, the various library associations in South Africa. The report from the mission made it very clear that it was imperative that we assist as best as we can. We were not going to force anything on the South African citizens, but we were there to assist and nudge based on whatever their wishes were. But we were there to advocate that South African librarians at this time could not afford to remain separated by race when the country was on the cusp of becoming an independent country that recognizes equality among all the races. I am pleased and proud to say that our colleagues in South Africa took the baton and focused on what to do. I believe that Claire Walker, may her soul rest in peace, has shared with Liasa the internal workings of how we did that. And I hope I can share with colleagues later on, hopefully at the Liasa conference, on the workings behind the scenes on this, because we don't have much time to do that at this particular point. I want to focus on the on the politics of the presidency. Before 2000, there was no open election of the presidency because all appointments of the presidency and governing board were done during conference. And part of our advocacy was that this is exclusionary for those who cannot afford to come to IFLA and for those who really have no experience of IFLA precisely because of unaffordability. But if we went on a postal ballot, all members would be able to do that. So I was a beneficiary to this in terms of having seen how my colleagues, Stephanie Ferguson from Jamaica, had lost because of lack of sharing of the campaign material and communication amongst the third world countries, it became important that we should build networks. At this point, I really would like to acknowledge Shoki Salem from Egypt, because he had been in the governing board and understood the politics of campaigning and election, how you make sure that you get your constituencies to understand what you want to give to them and how they should conduct themselves in voting. Hence, it was a new strategy that the third world adopted, that we shall unite and we should make sure that when we agree that this is the candidate that represents what we want, regardless of where they came from, we vote for them as a collective. My campaign was on libraries for lifelong literacy. I thought that theme because I believed that there are many literacies that affect us in the developing countries which are not visible in the global north. And in sharing my view on this, I then campaigned, and I had the opportunity of getting support from many colleagues, particularly from Liasa. Thank you, Liasa. You played an important role. I attended a conference where I presented my case to you all, and the feeling of having a major library association on the continent supporting me encouraged everyone else to come on board, including my own Botswana Library Association, which at the time I think they just thought she's punching above her weight and we don't know how she will manage this. The other colleagues were, of course, the rest of the third world and CILIP, as well as the Scandinavian countries. I got elected, and I was just recently reminded by Buhle Mbambo Tata, Dr. Mbambo Tata, who was one of my campaign managing team in Botswana, who said, even I did not expect I was doubtful about being elected, since I was campaigning against my other campaign teams. Opponents were from America, which obviously they vote en bloc, and I did not expect to win against that member. So when the news arrived telephonically from the IFLA headquarters that I had won, Bushembambo walked in and found me sort of saying to myself, oh my God, what was I trying to prove? Here it is now. Those things that you wish for come to haunt you. Indeed, I felt haunted at the time, but no sooner had I done that, I said, right, the campaign statements have got to be brought alive. The one change I brought was that I believe, and I still believe, that consultation is an important base for knowing what are the needs on the ground and how we are going to work together to address those challenges that are agreed as being problems, and also seeing the opportunities of how we can improve. How well are we doing on time? I'm not.
We can
Anyway.
give you a few more minutes. Not a
Few more
problem.
minutes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we had the first meeting of all those who were attending conference, who wished to participate, where we debated what were the priorities. I had an excellent team of my colleagues from the governing board who worked with me, so that we had workshops, a day's workshop, and out of that came the priorities that influence the next 4 years of our presidency next 4 years, because the first 2 were building the ground of how we are going to work with the subcommittees that were created out of the workshop. And then finally, in 2003, taking on my theme and presenting it for discussion and for cascading down to the sections. I think I'll end here. This has been it's just too long. I'm sorry, but I thought that it's best I give you the background and then come into the IFLA issues very briefly so that I can answer questions if you have any. Thank you. Are we there? In
Yes.
conclusion,
Yes.
in conclusion, then leadership is not a straightforward. Leadership development is not a straightforward, linear process. You develop it whenever you see opportunities. If you are willing to learn, if you are willing to consult and network, and also do your own continuing professional development. And all of this within the Library Association is based on your willingness to be a volunteer, to give of yourself, rather than expect the Library Association to be the one that supports you, the one that gives to you. It's a question of what can you contribute, and together we become stronger. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Raseroka. That was really, I mean, that you've been involved, you've participated, and you've witnessed so much transformation in our profession. And you've seen these institutions grow from the University of Botswana, where you helped to create a worthy academic institution and library, to moving onto the global platform. It's in a lot of ways, I think you're also an activist. You were an activist for equality, and you were an activist for change. And thank you for your participation in our profession. So I'm going to open the floor to our guests. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Otherwise, you can also raise your hand and we will unmute your mic. So let's give everyone a minute or so to ponder their questions. What I'm also going to do while everyone's thinking of their questions, I'm going to pop a link to a feedback form in the chat box. As regular guests know, at IGBIS, we like to hear from our members and our guests, see what you think of our webinars, and if you have any suggestions for any future presentations. No questions yet. Let me put my video on because I do have a question for you myself.
Okay.
Obviously, you faced so many sort of challenges and so much resistance on your path. You know, over the years, I think there's been a lot of turbulence. There's been a lot of change in our profession, and encountering that resistance or encountering bias, like you said, with regards to gender or race or nationality, sometimes it must have been difficult to continue. Did you find sometimes it was challenging? And if so, I mean, what inspired you to continue? What gave you the strength to rail against that resistance, to keep going, to keep advocating?
I think the single factor was really that I had a very supportive husband, one. And secondly, I had developed so many networks of colleagues within the library profession. I could chat about issues and hear honest interpretations and sharing of their own journeys and experiences. And importantly, within the university itself, I always had people who appreciated the complexity of the environment I was working in. I think having been a founding librarian and having stayed for this long as the director of library services in itself was a challenge for the younger people who felt that they needed me to move. But being in Botswana, and there's only one university at the time, there wasn't much opportunity of moving because I hadn't yet reached. I felt I didn't want to retire simply because there was the agitation about my not being a born and bred Botswana. Opportunity to go to South Africa were there, but again, you are tied now by the family. My children were growing up in Botswana, and to uproot them back to South Africa was another cannot do type of activity. Last but not least, just working, reading, publishing was also a beautiful escape route.
Thank you so much. The value of connection and communication. You've given us a lot to take home with us and to think about. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us this afternoon. And to everyone attending the LIASA conference, they'll have the opportunity to see you again, I believe, on Thursday morning, is it? You're one of the guest speakers at LIASA conference. So
yes, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm hoping that we can then interact with. The best part of it is interacting directly with members
in person. Yeah, exactly.
Person. Thank you so much for the honor and for the opportunity to share. I must say, a race through over 40 years of experience, but I hope it has been helpful to somebody.
Very much so. Thank you very much, Ms. Raseroka. And of course, to LIASA National Office, Apilile, thank you for hosting and moderating us today. It wouldn't have been possible without the National Office, and neither would it be possible without our members, without our guests attending today. Thank you to everyone, and wishing you all the best for the rest of the day.
Sarah, may I just acknowledge the assistance from my team this side, Morena Munganja and Eric Hout, who are helping me with the technical elements. you recognize that I'm not a techie. Otherwise, it would have run much. I would have been able to do it better. But anyway, this has been invaluable experience for me. It's my first webinar. Hello. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that first experience with us. We're honored.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.